I'm Pastor Bill Troke with Ridgeview Church, and I'm glad you decided to join us today. We're going to have a lot of fun on this Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day. Today we have some really great music planned for you. We're going to have fun. We're also going to learn about some very important things on how to reconnect with all that's wonderful in your life. But to begin with, I'd like to introduce you to a couple of friends of mine, really good friends of mine, Mike and Janet Nelson.
I'm Pastor Bill Troke with Ridgeview Church, and I'd like to introduce to you tonight my friends Mike and Janet Nelson. Mike is on the leadership team at our church, and together they've been the youth pastors at our church for a very, very long time, probably longer than you'd like to admit, right? And you guys met on the job, and isn't that right? And why don't you describe how that worked?
Well, all right. Well, I'll take that one because it just sometimes it flows better. We indirectly met through my twin brother Matt. He met Janet first, and I was single at the time, and he said, "Hey, there's this really pretty redhead at the hospital," and I had been there a lot taking accident investigations, and so
Because your job is
so I'm a police officer. I'm an accident investigator.
Yeah.
So being at the hospital all the time, I had said I never saw her, and eventually I did meet Janet at the hospital. There was a little back and forth, but we did eventually go out, and the rest is history after that. But she was working in the emergency room where I was there taking a crash, and we met through just circumstance being at work.
But didn't something kind of funny happen on the front end? Because your brother is an identical twin, isn't that right?
Well, I tried to leave that part out, but
I think
since it's part of the fun story, I had never met Janet, and Matt described her, and having been in the hospital so many times on all these accident investigations, I'm like, I've never seen her there. And so I happened to come across her while she was at Starbucks, and somehow in between that, when she had met Matt at the hospital, they had an encounter, and Janet was trying to give him a sandwich because he had been there so long. And so I then met her again at Starbucks, and I tried to introduce myself. Well, in between Janet meeting Matt and me meeting Janet, she realized or found out that Matt was married, and she didn't know that we were twins. And so when I tried to introduce myself, I got the most extreme cold shoulder you've ever met in your life, and I didn't understand why. So naturally I went back to Matt and said, I don't know how friendly she was to you, but I did not get that same experience. So later on, when I went back to the hospital, a mutual friend that was also a nurse there had explained to Janet there was two of us, and so the second encounter that we had was much different. So
she just thought you were a married guy and you were being a creep.
Kinda, yeah. I mean,
well, he was nice and normal, and I knew he was married in the ER. And then when I saw him at the Starbucks, I was like, why is he flirting with me now? Creep.
Really funny. But and you guys have been married a really long time now, and the rest is history. You got kids, you got 3 dogs, you got all this kind of stuff.
Lizards.
And so now we're living in this COVID-19 world, and you as a law enforcement officer, Mike, and Janet, you as a nurse in a hospital. What kind of precautions do you guys take? I mean, what's that like doing your jobs today?
Well, just here at home, we're more careful, obviously, because we're both in an environment where we have probably a greater opportunity for exposure, and so we just put into place protocols for when we both get home. We'll say hello, but we don't interact. We don't pet the animals. We just go right to the washroom, and we have pre-set up bathrobes and stuff so we can change in there, go upstairs, shower, wash all our clothes before we have those interactions, and we just try to make sure that we follow those protocols to keep our family safe, our house clean, and I think we do it within reason, so that and we make sure that we explain it to our kids so that they understand why we do it, so that they don't live in fear, because that's really not what God calls us to do, but it doesn't mean you can't be responsible.
Do you have anything to add with your job, Janet? Because you've actually worked with some COVID patients, is that right?
Yes. It's been tough because the hospital from day to day changes. Nobody really knows what to expect. So from day to day, it's like you have to kind of change gears. Fortunately, where I work for Kaiser. They have cross-trained some of us nurses into ICU or DOU, which has been a blessing because instead of having just one patient and one nurse that's overwhelmed, you could have 3 nurses that are doing team nursing for 2 patients. So I feel like we've really got a jump on it, and I feel like that everybody's done their part and kept the census low at the hospital so that we could manage the patients and really give them the care that they need. So that's been kind of fortunate for us, and it's been scary going to work. I've done the testing where you're swabbing them and you're afraid of any kind of exposure, but I felt pretty at peace about it, and just because we take the right precautions, and so we feel pretty good.
And how does your faith intersect with your jobs?
Well, for me, it's been a great opportunity to witness or just to be positive, because so many people are really negative and just like it's the end of the world and it's horrible.
Zombie apocalypse.
Right, and I had one girlfriend who was writing on the chalkboard like, "You guys, I love you and I'm going to miss you if I get COVID." It's just like, Ella, you're going to be all right. You're fine. But so I think it's kind of been a great opportunity to be optimistic for me personally.
I think for me, we definitely have seen this different shift in society a little bit and you can kind of see the fear and also the misunderstanding about what it is, the misinformation that's being spread through all the different news. If you go channel to channel, you'll get different information every single time, and there's always a spin one direction or the other with politics, and it's very difficult just to get the specific scientific information that people need to be safe. And so I think so for my job, you're starting to see, this weird shift in the mass buying or the theft or the things, and also people being afraid of not being able to pay their bills. Yeah. You see domestic violence go way up. You're seeing child abuse go way up just because a lot of families are not used to being enclosed in a small space for such a long period of time. And, out here in Valley Center, we're very blessed to have more space, but we really, in interacting with people that live in apartments, that are feet away from each other and multiple families and noise, it's funny when people are at home all day long, they start to notice all those things that they don't when they're at work all day. Right. So we just seen a little bit of that shift in that. But again, to capitalize on what Janet said is we have that opportunity to show that calm that we get with our faith by explaining, hey, look, I don't go to work every day worried because I have this faith of knowing exactly what my path is and knowing that God has me. So, Janet always tells me if you're worried about it and you're not trusting in God, you're being an atheist, and so she always pokes fun at me about that, because I worry, but I think everybody does. But I think that's where you have to go back and give it to God and just know that He has you.
I remember, Mike, you a couple weeks back, when this thing had really started kicking in, when there was a lot of fear, it was really palpable because we saw what was going on in New York. We were wondering if it was coming here and stuff. And you told me about a night that you knew Janet needed a night out and stuff, but the restaurants were closed. Yeah, and tell us about that.
Well, and because of our job, and Janet had all of their shifts have been changed. They've moved people out of special procedures into uncomfortable places, and so because of that, I just realized that we're all home and we just need to get away. So, and we had discussed it a little bit beforehand, having that need, but it's just everything has to-go orders. So Janet and I loaded up in the truck and we drove out to Oceanside, and I pre-ordered some Black Angus. We picked up on the way out there and just drove out to the beach.
What did you get?
Filet mignon.
Steaks.
Yeah, you gotta have a filet, which was pretty funny.
And a bloomin' onion.
Yeah, you got a bloomin' onion. We decided just to wreck it into the wall. We're gonna eat it. Let's just go big.
And you put a fireplace on the phone.
Yeah, well, you got.
So you went down to the beach?
Yeah, so we drove out to the beach. We didn't get out because you weren't supposed to. So we rolled the windows down and put the little fireplace on the phone that that crackled, and little fireplace app, and we just sat and enjoyed the view, and just spent the time actually having the opportunity to sit and be relaxed and just talk and have a meal and just be out kind of away from it.
Awesome. That's great.
It was good.
Well, this weekend is Mother's Day, and you got any special plans that you know of?
Oh, I always have plans.
Great.
I always have plans, but I think that.
Well, we'll just let Mike surprise you.
Oh,
No pressure, Mike.
Yeah.
But I mean, you did that. That's an awesome thing. The Fireplace app and stuff like that.
Yeah.
The challenge now is going to be to top it.
Yeah.
And this-
Oh yeah. That's a good challenge.
Yeah.
It's a very good challenge.
Well, thanks so much for sharing, you guys, and talking with us, and I love your view, and it's just amazing. And as this good weather comes, I also hope that we all have a turn of mood here, right? And thanks so much.
You bet.
I see trees of green, red roses too. I see 'em blooming for me and you. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue, clouds of white, the bright blessed day, the dark sacred night. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty up in the sky, also on the faces of people running by. I see friends waving hands, saying, how do you do? They're really saying, I love you. I hear babies cry, I watch them grow. They'll learn much more than I'll ever know. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Yes, I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Oh yeah.
That song reminds us that in spite of the way we sometimes view our circumstances, life is actually really good. There's a lot of good in our lives. That song heals us from a kind of moral blindness that we can fall into, a bitterness that sometimes gets born out of our disappointments and unfulfilled expectations in life. And we can, our hearts oftentimes trend towards an attitude of ingratitude. And so can we agree that on this Mother's Day we're going to knock it off? Can we do that? Can we just say that, okay? And the blessings we can enjoy are actually right in front of us, but the problem we have is we miss them. And in order to reconnect with that, to do an attitude adjustment, to have to develop a different way of seeing, it really requires a kind of spin that we have to put on things sometimes. And it can be hard to get there, especially for guys like me. You know what happened to me the other day? I sincerely went to my wife, the mother of my 4 children, and I had an epiphany. You know, it was an unexpected realization of just how fortunate I was, and I snuggled up to her and I told my wife how thankful I was to have someone I enjoyed so much to be quarantined with. And she said, must be nice. I mean, it's hard being me, you know, but you know, we need help in this, in all seriousness, and because there's so much in our lives that cause us to drift into discontentment and unhappiness. Good stuff is all around us, but we tend to, human nature is to sometimes tend to focus on the negative imperfections of life and miss the beauty that's all around us. We need help, and so we have to get practical about it. And this is so important to think about. Have you ever received an imperfect gift in your life? Well, of course you have. We all have. You know, that's because here's the thing, this is the point I want to make. In the world we live in, that's the only kind you're ever going to get. Okay? If you're married, your spouse is a gift. If you're sitting next to your spouse right now, you're sitting next to a gift, but you're sitting next to an imperfect gift. And if you're sitting next to your spouse, I want to ask you just to take a look at your spouse right now. And you're looking at a wonderful gift. Not perfect, but a wonderful gift nonetheless. And you know what they're looking at if they're looking at you? They're looking at the same thing. a gift, but one that's imperfect. You're sitting next to an imperfect gift, and so are they. And so we have to learn how to be grateful. We have to spin it. And I'd like to invite you just to say to your imperfect gift right now, just say this: as imperfect as you are, I am grateful for you. And then I'd like you to say, as imperfect as I am, thank you for being grateful for me too. If you say it often enough, okay, you might even start to believe it. That's the thing. That's we have to train ourselves. And if you train yourself to be grateful, you're going to make it easier for your husband or your wife to be grateful for you as well. That's just how it works. We must learn how to be grateful for imperfect gift. And here's the thing. If you're married, you were warned, okay? You were warned at that marriage ceremony. Remember, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in bad times and in good, the commitment you made was for the good parts of life, but it was also for the not so good parts of life. And this applies to all of life. It applies to our kids. If I wait for my kids to clean their rooms perfectly before I praise them, I'll never praise them at all. Nobody gets perfect kids, okay? And by the way, guess what? No kid gets a perfect parent either. We're all imperfect, and it applies to your body. It applies to your body. Your body is a gift. You know, think about this one. If you're sitting with some people, let's do a show of hands right now, okay? You know, how many of you have an imperfect body? Okay, raise your hand. Go ahead, raise your hand. And if you didn't raise your hand, what I'd like to ask you to do is text me or email me, and I'll hook you up with all the other people that didn't raise their hand. Then maybe you two could get together and have perfect kids together. Good luck with that, you know. But if we go through life thinking if my body were just different, okay, and perfect, if I had somebody else's body and look, then I would be grateful. Then I would be happy. Then I would be content. But here's the thing, it won't work. It just doesn't. The secret to peace and contentment in life, the secret to the good life, is to learn how to be grateful for what you got, okay? Be grateful for your imperfect body, for your imperfect home, for your imperfect friends, for your imperfect family. Be grateful for your imperfect job, your imperfect mind, your imperfect life. It's just how it works. Those things are all gifts, but they're imperfect gifts. You never receive a perfect gift in this life. And if you wait for perfect gifts, you'll never be happy at all. You know, that's just how it works, because that's the kind of life we have. That's the world that we live in. You know, maybe life didn't turn out the way you'd hoped it would, you know. But there's a lot of wisdom. There used to be this guy, this basketball coach at UCLA named John Wooden, okay, and he just said the most amazing things. And one of the things he said was this: things turn out best for people who make the best of the way things turn out. Make the best of the way your life has turned out. And so we have to learn how to be thankful for imperfect things. And the Bible gives us good advice in this regard. Now, when you get discontented and all worked up about the imperfections that you see in your teammates in life, that you see in your circumstances of life, when you just generally see in your life, the Apostle Paul gives us an action plan and a promise associated with that plan. Here's the instruction. He says, do not be anxious. Don't get worked up about anything. Instead, in every situation, by prayer and petition, which means you're petitioning God, saying, hey God, this is what's going on in my life. And he says, do this with an attitude of thanksgiving, knowing that he hears you. Present your requests to God. That's the action plan. When you get all worked up, present it to God, go to him, explain it to him. And if you do that, here's the promise. This is in Philippians chapter 4, verse 7. It says that the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. That you can know peace, even in impossible circumstances. How? By talking with God about what's going on, expressing to him how you feel about what's going on. In other words, pray, which is just simply talking. Does prayer change things? Okay. Does prayer change the people around you? Does prayer change your circumstances? Well, sometimes it does. Sometimes prayer does. God moves sometimes in those ways. But most of the time, prayer only changes one thing. Prayer only changes one thing most of the time. And you know what that one thing is? That one thing is you and me. Prayer usually doesn't eliminate the imperfections of your teammates or your circumstances. They will always be imperfect. But the promise of peace gets realized when we, through our prayers, experience a change that God wants to bring into our lives. And the main way that change happens is by changing the way we see our teammates and our circumstances. Your teammates and your circumstances will always be imperfect, okay? And even if they change, it doesn't guarantee that you'll be satisfied, that you'll know peace and happiness. It's because, you know why? Because of that old saying, wherever you go, there you are. There you are. Peace and happiness comes when we pray through stuff and experience the transformation that God wants to bring into our lives. And then Paul goes on, and in the next breath, he gives advice on practically how to spin your attitude, how to seek that transformation. When it comes to you, the way you deal with your teammates and your circumstances, he wraps it up this way. He says, finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right and pure, whatever is lovely and admirable, whatever is excellent or praiseworthy, think about those things. Focus on that which is good, excellent, and praiseworthy in the other person. Think about all the stuff that's going on in your life that's admirable, lovely, and good. If you focus on that, the promise is here, again, the peace of God will be with you. He's saying we have to learn how to look through our imperfections. We have to slog around in the mud sometimes and find the gold, okay? Sift through the stuff and find the nuggets. Find those things that are valuable and focus on those things rather than on that which you're not enjoying. And that's why the song, It's a Wonderful World, I think is so powerful, and it's such a classic because it openly expresses gratitude. It opens our hearts up to beauty and gratitude in our everyday lives and reminds us of what really matters in life. The things that really matter are the simple things, the things that are right in front of us, the common things that are so easy to forget and take for granted and overlook. That song teaches us to look past the imperfections that we see in life. It looks past the thorns, and then we see red roses too. We see them bloom for me and for you, and then we think to ourselves, what a wonderful world. It reminds us that while dark nights are sometimes scary, and those dark seasons of life can be that way, but there are also sacred nights where we can think to ourselves, wow, God, thank you so much for this amazing, wonderful world. It reminds us that after the storm, there can be the colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky. And it reminds us that when we see friends shaking hands, if we look through that simple thing that we do, what we're really hearing is people saying, I love you, I love you. It looks past the poopy diapers and all the challenges of raising our kids, and reminds us that when we hear babies cry and we watch them grow, wow, they're going to learn so much more than I'll ever know. I hope my kids just outrun me. And I think to myself, this is just a great life. I think to myself, it's a wonderful world. I just want to remind you of that today. Would you pray with me? Lord, each of us, where we are, be with us in this moment and make this our personal prayer. Lord, in my imperfect world, change one thing in my life. I ask this sincerely, God. Change one thing in my life. Change me. Help me to see the beautiful, wonderful world that you've given me, the wonderful life that you've given me. Help me to see that each and every day. It's in your holy name that I pray. Amen.
For all those times you stood by me, for all the truth that you made me see, for all the joy you brought to my life, for all the wrong that you made right, for every dream you made come true, for all the love I found in you, I'll be forever thankful, baby. You're the one who held me up, never let me fall. You're the one who saw me through it all. You were my strength when I was weak. You were my voice when I couldn't speak. You were my eyes when I couldn't see. You saw the best there was in me, lifted me up when I couldn't reach. You gave me faith 'cause you believed. I'm everything I am because you love me. Gave me wings and made me fly. You touched my hand, I could touch the sky. I lost my faith, you gave it back to me. You said no star was out of reach. You stood by me and I stood tall. I had you in love, I had it all. I'm grateful for each day you gave me. Maybe I don't know that much, but I know this much is true. I was blessed because I was loved by you. You were my strength when I was weak. You were my voice when I couldn't speak. You were my eyes when I couldn't see. You saw the best there was in me, lifted me up when I couldn't reach. You gave me faith 'cause you believed. I'm everything I am because you love me. I'm everything I am because you love me. I'm everything I am because you